What's up, guys? Welcome to Poor Man Mods. I put in my resume and got rehired to Poor Man Mods. Brad and Moser rehired me. Thank you very much for that.
It was a difficult decision. We hate you.
So I'm back, and we're going to be working on this 92, 91, 92. What year is this Ranger?
93.
It's an early 90s Ranger. It's right over there. It's got a 302 in it with a carburetor on it. And it runs like absolute crap. We did just recently install nitrous on it, and it runs terrible because it's not tuned properly. And I don't know anything about carbs, so what I did is I reached out to ProSport and asked them for a wideband so we can install it in the Ranger and see what the heck is going on and see if we can tune the carb properly. So they sent us a wideband, a very nice wideband kit. Comes with literally everything you need: the gauge, a new bung, all the wiring, a Bosch O2 sensor. And we're going to install it in this Ranger, and it's going to be the most high-tech piece of equipment in the entire truck. And I'm not sure if Moser's going to be able to handle it, but it's going to tell us what's going on with the carburetor so we can tune it and get it running good. I know it's running rich, and I'd like to see how rich it is. It's probably just going to be a full 10 as soon as we turn it on. All the richness.
Next time we run it, let's light the floor after we're done.
Yeah.
Because there's that much gas that came out of the pipes all over the floor.
It literally just gets the floor wet. It's ridiculous. So we're going to go over to the Ranger and install this wideband. So big thanks to ProSport for sending us this gauge. I'll have a link to this gauge on their website down below for you to check it out. It's a really cool gauge. It's hard to see because the face is tinted, but it has a needle and a digital readout. So you'll see that later on, but let's get to it.
All right, guys, so we're down here underneath the truck now, which is a dangerous place to be because it's very oily and drippy. So basically, we're not going to be able to follow any of the rules that we're supposed to with this truck, and we're going to make the best of it that we can. You want to try and install the sensor close to the motor, but before the catalytic converters, because the cats are going to change the chemical breakup of the exhaust gases. So you want to get a good reading. The other thing is that in a V-style engine, you want to try and install this in a place where you're going to be able to read the engine as a whole. So that would be a Y pipe or an H pipe or some kind of crossover. But unfortunately, because of the way this exhaust is set up, the H pipe isn't until after the cats. So we're going to only be technically monitoring one side of the motor and assuming that the carburetor is doing the same thing on both sides, which is a big assumption with this truck. But either way, we have selected a space right here that we're going to install it. The other rule that we will be able to follow is that you want to make sure when you install the sensor, it's at least 10 degrees above level so that you don't get any moisture buildup that would over time ruin the sensor. So we are going to mount it somewhere right about here. And we're going to drill the hole big enough that we can weld the bung on and that the sensor head will be able to peek through.
Now, if you don't have a welder, there is a half-ass option that you can do, and I've done it up when I worked at TJ Baloney Parts. If you don't have a welder, you can get these clamp-on oxygen sensor bungs, which I do not recommend ever using. But if you're in a pinch and you don't have a welder, essentially you drill the hole in the exhaust, and it's kind of like a curved shaped piece of steel with an O2 sensor bung on it. And then you take two hose clamps and clamp it around the pipe. Oh my God. And it seals. There's like a graphite gasket and it seals around the pipe.
Yeah.
But it's like a clamp on bung.
Such a bad idea.
I did that when I did a fuel injection kit on a Bronco because it needed an O2 sensor. It didn't come with a welded bung. It worked, but like I don't ever recommend doing it. But if you don't have a welder, it's cheaper to do that than to buy a welder. But options.
For what it's worth, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with this punch, and I'm going to punch myself a spot. I want to eye it up with the drill because I don't have a lot of clearance with the drill with where it hits the transmission. So, right about there. Right about there. Oh, I got to get a better grip on the old punch. Oh, it might help if I go forward. How about that?
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful.
All right, so now that we got a pilot hole started, we're going to use the step bit and just make it big enough until the O2 sensor fits through it.
See if she fits.
It fits.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
All right, now we're gonna attempt to weld this thing in here. It's probably gonna turn out pretty ugly. All right. Now we did this with the sensor on the bung, so we know we weren't off center. So now we're gonna take the sensor out and finish the weld. All right, we got the bung welded on. Very, very ugly weld. Some of the worst welding I've ever seen in my entire life. But it's on, and it didn't break off because the sensor is now torqued on, and it's held on and doesn't leak. Now we can move on to wiring. So, gotta run the wiring for the sensor, and then run the wiring to the cabin so we can install the gauge and such. So that's what we'll do next, is the wiring. Yeah. This was the hard part though. Now it's just pretty much smooth sailing.
And it was not easy to weld from the bottom up around the top
Yeah.
and make sure all the welds were even. That wasn't fun.
The easiest and smartest way to do it is to remove the pipe, but all the hardware on here is so old and corroded, it probably would have broken off. So that's why we welded it on the truck, but if you can, it's definitely easier to do it off the vehicle. All right, we're ready to wire up this gauge. Now, when you get everything out of the box, it might be a little overwhelming. It looks like there's a lot of wiring going on, but it's actually really simple. So let me explain it to you. So this is the controller that comes with the wideband. You're gonna mount this preferably inside the truck somewhere, keep it safe, keep it dry, you don't wanna ruin it. So this wire right here, this is what's gonna power the whole unit. Just gonna plug in, very simple, just like so. There's 4 wires here, a black, white, orange, and a red. The red one is gonna be your constant power wire, so you're gonna wire that right to the battery if you wanna keep memory in the gauge. The white wire is gonna go 12-volt ignition. Now, if you're not worried about memory or keeping the peak numbers, you can just wire the red and white wire to your 12-volt ignition source. That makes it a little bit easier, and I think that's what we're gonna do for this install. And the black wire goes to ground, and then this orange wire is also optional. The orange wire goes to your headlights, so when you turn your headlights on, it can turn to amber, turn the headlights off, and it'll go back to white. If you don't want the gauge to change, if you want it to be always amber or always white, you can just hook up one of the wires. But if you do like that feature to where you turn the headlights on for nighttime and it makes it amber and it's not as bright in your eyes, then you can wire up the amber wire to the headlights. I think we are gonna do that with this install. So we're gonna take the red and white wire to a 12-volt ignition source on this truck, the black wire to ground, and then we're gonna take the orange wire to the headlights. This harness here goes right to the gauge. Just plug it into the controller and wire it right to the gauge. Pretty simple. This harness here is an analog output for data logging. So if you want to map all your data points on your standalone ECU or with some kind of program, that's what this would be for. But we're not going to be using that with this truck, so we're not going to be doing any data logging or anything like that. So we don't need this harness for this truck. So that leaves us with this harness, and this goes right to the wideband sensor itself. Plugs right into the controller and right to the sensor. So we have a lot to run, but really the only wiring we have to do, 3 wires right here. It's gonna be pretty simple. So let's find out where we're gonna mount this controller, probably under the dash somewhere, and start running our wires to it. So this truck is pretty small. There's not a whole lot of room anywhere. But I think we're gonna mount the controller right under the steering column. I dropped these 2 panels right here, and I think we're just going to zip tie it to the column and have it in between these 2 panels. There really isn't anywhere to safely put this in this truck with all the wires. It is just super cramped. So it's gonna be right about here. Just zip tie it to the column and it should work pretty good. So now we're gonna try to run all of our wires to this device. And I think we're going to put the gauge right on top of the column. All right, here's the harness that goes to the sensor itself. We're going to run the end with the smaller connector through this hole in the firewall towards the control unit. So down here, if you can see that blue piece of sheathing, It's just a hole in the firewall that goes right inside. There is no grommet. It is just a hole. Makes it easy, but I think that's why you can smell a lot of smells in this truck when you're going down the road. It's just a gaping hole. So we're going to shove a little bit of that in there, not the whole thing, because we're going to need some of this length to run to the sensor itself. Now we're going to take this dash apart, try to gain access to the wiring for the headlight switch right here. This is such a terrifying feeling, popping off old plastic in the cold. Alright, so here's our headlight switch. If we can gain access to the wires behind it, should just be able to go right to the ground, the power, and the headlight power to power the whole gauge. So we'll try to make this as easy as possible. Hopefully I remember where everything goes. This isn't my truck, so I'm not too familiar with it. But I guess if I miss a screw, weight reduction, right? Alright, beautiful, that's exactly what we want. Now we're just going to pull out my power probe, or you can look up a wiring diagram and see which one is the 12 volt coming in and which one is the power going out to the headlights. Yeah, this is the Power Probe 3, I believe. This tool is absolutely amazing if you do any kind of wiring. It'll help you find grounds, help you find power sources. It applies power, applies ground. It is absolutely amazing. I'll have a link in the description down below if you guys want one of these. It's absolutely incredible. So what we're going to do here is try to find the power coming in, that's 12 volt ignition, and then the power going out to the headlights. So turn the ignition on. See if we can find a power source. Alright, now if we turn the key off, alright, so that is a ignition power source right there. So that's the orange wire. Now let's see if we can find the power wire going to the headlights when we turn this switch on. Power, ground, ground, ground. So I'm going to guess it's going to be one of these three that are going to the headlights. So let's turn it on. Remember, these were all ground. Oh, that might be it. This battery's about to die. So there's power. Now it's ground. Power, barely because this battery sucks. Ground. So that is the wire going to our headlights. This is where we are going to put our orange wire. And this wire right here is where our red and white wire is going to go. Okay, so right here is the orange wire going to the headlight switch. This is our 12 volt power source, and we bundled together the red and white wire. So we're not having memory on this gauge. It'll turn on once the key is turned on, and it'll clear once the key is turned off. So now we just have to connect it back to that wire, and then we will connect this orange one to this wire. Get it crimped real good, and then of course do the pull test, make sure there's no wiggling in there. It's pretty good. We'll move on to the orange wire. Alright, beautiful. Now we just have to tackle the ground. Okay, so we grounded the harness to a bolt on the steering column. And before we put this whole interior back together, we're going to test the gauge because my luck, something won't work. So I have the gauge here and the harness for the gauge. We're going to connect it to the controller, and then we're going to go underneath and connect the harness for the O2 sensor, turn the key on, and see if it works. And then once it works, we'll tidy everything up. So we're not going to, clean up the wiring just yet. Don't do any cleanup work until you know the gauge is working properly. Going to leave the gauge hang right here. We'll go underneath and plug that connector in and turn the truck on. Alright, we're connected to the wideband sensor. Let's turn on the key and see what happens. The gauge works. Look at that. And when you turn the headlights on, it does change color. So that's pretty cool. It goes to amber for night, and it's white for the daytime. Pretty freaking cool. I like this gauge a lot, actually. So now we're going to clean up all the wiring, you know, zip tie everything up, bundle it up, make sure all the wires are away from heat and moving parts, and put the dash back together, and then we'll mount the gauge. I'm not going to show you how to clean up all the wiring. I think you know how to do that. But we'll come back to us mounting the gauge right here. Okay, the gauge does come with this mounting bracket for the pod. You can either use 3M tape to mount it or screws, or you can mount the gauge in another pod if you have it. But we're going to use the mount that it comes with. We're going to put it right here. I have 3 screws. We're just going to put it right there. And if Moser doesn't like the location, he can go install it himself, because I'm the one here doing it. So he's going to like it, whether he likes it or not. I think it's a good idea to have your wideband front and center anyway, because, you know, in a high-performance application, the wideband is one of the most important gauges, so you want to keep an eye on it. You want that thing front and center. Next, we will mount the pod to the bracket. Get it snug, but don't fully tighten it just yet. So you can position this where you want it. We'll run the wire through the back of it and pull it out. So the gauge doesn't slide around and rotate in the pod. It does come with this buffer foam. You just peel the backing off and wrap this around the gauge, and it'll keep it nice and snug. And plug the gauge into the harness. And get it clocked in the pod the way that you want. Make sure it's not crooked. And push it in. Alright, that's looking pretty good. We'll fully tighten the bolt on the pod here, and that is looking really good. Nice. All right, let's turn this baby on and see how it's running. The gauge does take a little bit to start up, 20 or 30 seconds for the sensor to warm up. She's actually running a little lean. Yeah, this thing needs a tune real bad. That's why I got this thing. Not good. And it'll die. Oh, there it goes. So, yeah. Good thing we got this wideband. It definitely needs a tune. And it's on the daytime setting now. And you can either turn the headlights on and make it go amber, or hit this button and it'll dim for you. It's pretty cool. And this gauge looks really awesome. And I'm loving the placement right here on the steering column. So he originally told me to mount this gauge down there with his water temperature gauge, but I'm like, dude, no, you need to monitor this thing. It needs to be right in front of you so you know what's going on, not down there and forgotten about. So I like where it's mounted, and if he doesn't, he can move it himself. But I think it looks so good. I definitely do like how it has a digital display and the needle. I think that's pretty cool. The one I have in my car is only digital, but I do really like how it's got the needle and digital. One more thing, guys. ProSport is actually going to give you $40 off the wideband gauge that we just installed. So if you want to pick one up for yourself, I have the coupon code right here on the screen and also in the description down below. You can use that at their website and get $40 off the gauge that we just installed. So go over to their website, check out their stuff, pick up this gauge, save yourself 40 bucks, which is a hell of a deal. So go do it, and big thanks to ProSport. This is pretty awesome. All right, guys, there you go. We got the ProSport Wideband installed in this 92 Ranger with the 302. It's not running good at all, and that's why we installed the Wideband, so we can properly tune this carburetor and get it running in tip-top shape and hopefully get to using this nitrous soon. So big thanks to ProSport for helping us out with this video. It wouldn't have been possible without them. So I'll have a link in the description to the gauge that we installed in this truck, and also just a link to their website so you can check out their gauges. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned how to install a wideband gauge. I know we didn't exactly install it properly because the way this exhaust is set up, you want to be able to monitor all of the cylinders, but unfortunately the way this exhaust is set up, we're only monitoring the left side of the engine. We could monitor all banks, but that would be after catalytic converters, and that is not good either. So we chose to monitor half the engine and be before the cats, but ideally you want to be before the cats and monitor all cylinders if possible. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, big thanks to ProSport, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.